I tend to just kind of look at things from a non-PowerPoint position. I am not against PowerPoint. I do believe it's very effective, and as you can tell from the fine training from Siri and Cami, the importance of being effective at PowerPoint is so important. And we recognize absolutely the impact that it can have because you're really engaging two senses, right? The visual and the hearing. So there's no doubt that PowerPoint is so important. But I like to just help people to appreciate that even without PowerPoint, you can be effective at public speaking. And so what we discuss is the 6 P's of public speaking success. And we help people to appreciate that there are ways that they can certainly have a tremendous impact on the lives of others as well as on themselves by really instilling these things. Now, I'd like to just share this quote with you. Now, if I told you, and this is a quote, that it is vital to be able to communicate well, and what would you say? Well, obviously, that goes without saying. We appreciate how important good communication skills are, good presentation skills, again, being adept at public speaking. But the second part of that quote is, it adds at least 50% to your value. Think about that. It is vital to be able to communicate well. It adds at least 50% to your value. Now, who do you think said that? Well, none other than Warren Buffett. Now, Warren Buffett probably doesn't need any more value given to him. But the point is, of course, is that this individual, with all his genius, his economic ability, and we all appreciate this individual as an investing marvel. One of the most important skills that he learned was public speaking. He said public speaking training changed his life. And he's come to appreciate that, again, when you're effective at communicating with others, it adds value. Now, that could be just value in the sense of you can make more money, or it just makes you more valuable as a person. And it really does. Now, when a person hears that, they might think, well, does that mean a person who is not effective at public speaking isn't as valuable? Well, then that's not really the point. But you might look at it this way. Let's say you have a nice house. There's nothing really wrong with this house. It's a nice house. It takes care of its job. You sleep in it, you eat in it, your family enjoys it. But what would happen if you decide to remodel that house, especially perhaps updating the kitchen, or updating the bathroom, or adding another bedroom? Now, from a financial standpoint, what does it do to that house? It increases its value. Does that mean the house was worthless before? Well, obviously not. In fact, you might have been just fine. But especially if you're in the market to sell it or something like that, it adds value. See, and that's what public speaking does. When you're effective at public speaking, it adds value to you as a person. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean on the job, which can be very important, but just in life, period. So again, what we help people to appreciate, and what we're going to talk about for a few minutes today, are the 6 P's of public speaking success. Now, there's so many different things that we can get in. There's so many different P's. I actually have a seminar that kind of goes over 20 or more P's of public speaking. We're only going to discuss 6 of them. And really, it's kind of like the foundation. So what I'd like to ask you first off, what do you think some of those P's are? Those important P's of public speaking success. Care to guess at any what some of those might be?
Personality.
That's an excellent one. That's an excellent one. We won't be discussing that today. But that actually, that is a very important one, actually. Thank you, Shirley. Any others?
Passionate. You got to be passionate.
Passion. And we are going to touch on that. Thank you, Jeanette. That is a good one. Any others that you might have just appreciate? A few of them you've actually gone over today already, even though you may not know it. But those are some good ones. Personality, passion. There are a lot of different things that are involved in becoming effective at public speaking. But the first one that we're going to talk about, which I believe is really the foundation of becoming good and effective at communicating, at public speaking, at presenting, is power. Now, when you think power, what may come to your mind automatically? Perhaps a person who has a powerful voice. They're able to get their thoughts across. But we're not really talking about that. When it comes to power, I really appreciate this quote by Emerson. Emerson said, "Speech is power. Speech is to persuade. Speech is to convert. Speech is to compel." Think about that. Speech is power. So here's the thing. If a person doesn't recognize the power of public speaking and the impact that they can have, they're not going to have an impact on their audience when they talk to them. It's truly important to recognize just how powerful a voice a public speaker has and the impact that they can have on others. Wouldn't you agree? In fact, history testifies as to the power of public speaking. Can you think of any examples, good or bad, that really help us to appreciate the power and impact of speech? Can you think of any examples in history, good or bad?
MLK.
Awesome example. We think about the March on Washington, the I Have a Dream speech. Clearly a very powerful speaker, and that's the case with a lot of individuals, of course, who are perhaps of the clergy class and what have you. Can you think of any other examples?
Hitler.
Exactly. Hitler. Would you say that he had a powerful voice and that he recognized how important it was to get across to the individuals he was talking to with that negative message that he had? So that's one of the ones that always comes up in this class. Hitler, obviously. And even though we may tend not to attribute this quality to him, he had charisma because he knew how to get to people through speech, didn't he? But we see the effects of it and the results. Horrible. But the fact is, he recognized the power of speech. So there's a bad example. How about this one? How many of you remember the guy on the tragedy, Jim Jones? Individuals like that. David Koresh, Waco, Texas, and others, right? The impact that they had and how they were able to affect all these individuals and actually lead them into killing themselves because of the impact that they had. Now let's look at some positive examples. We mentioned MLK. Anyone in particular that you might appreciate that is a very powerful speaker and obviously has a tremendous impact on individuals? Go-to guy, right? That's when they need something done, they send Clinton because they know he knows how to work an audience and he knows how to talk to people. Do you think he appreciates the power of speech? And we could think, yeah, Steve, please.
You're going to mention somebody.
Yeah, go ahead.
Phil Jackson as a coach.
Oh my goodness, yes, man, I'm passionate about basketball. I love, and you're right. And you would think on the surface, right, especially dealing with these, a lot of these guys with egos and what have you, are they ever listen to this? And they buy into it. And he has that impact on individuals. Even someone like Michael Jordan, he knows he could not be where he was without Phil Jackson. And he's the kind of coach that, again, recognized the importance of speech, being able to talk to others, and the impact that he can have in a positive way. So thank you. So many good examples there. And so the fact is, we have to recognize the power that we all have within us. And that's one reason why a lot of people fear public speaking, because they don't appreciate that they have that power within them to change, to make a difference, to influence others in a positive way. But you have to recognize that. If you don't get that you can have an impact on your audience, even if it's just here in the corporate world or for your career, how are you going to have an impact? If you really don't believe in what you say, if you really don't believe that your words have weight, how in the world can you influence others? Can you get them to do something? You can't. And so you really have to recognize the power of public speaking, how important that is. And that's why that's really the foundation. And once you recognize that power, then you'll be able to see the impact that you can have on others and more than likely motivate them, inspire them, move them to action, which is what you want to do, right? And so such an important point. Now, how many of you remember what Peter Parker's sage uncle told him in Spider-Man?
Great power and great responsibility.
Exactly. Kind of a corny saying, but doesn't it make sense? With great power comes great responsibility. So when you recognize that you have that power, when you recognize that you can have that impact, when you recognize that the words that you say are so powerful that they can move individuals to do things, that's power. But you have to recognize with that comes great responsibility in two ways. First of all, if you have that power, if you know that you can have that sort of impact, wouldn't it be selfish if you don't share that? Even if it's just on the job. If you know something, if you're an expert at your field, for example, Doug, so what do you do?
Quality assurance.
Yeah, so if you know that, and there's these individuals that don't know it well, they need to learn it from someone else for them to excel. And you like, well, yeah, I know it, but I really don't like to share. And I don't. Isn't that sort of selfish if you're not willing to share that with them? See, and that's the thing. So when a person has that knowledge, that expertise, and they have the power within them to share that, and they don't, in reality, it's being selfish. You're not accepting the responsibility of what you've learned and how you can help others. But then on the flip side, and we talk about these negative examples in history, right? What don't you want to use with that power? Alexei, for example. What don't you want to do with that power that you have? Especially when you think about people in the past like Hitler or something like that. Even though you have that power, what do you not do with it?
Well, you don't want to cause harm, but that's personal things. I mean, you really got to have a good moral compass to do that.
Yeah, you really do. Exactly. Any other thoughts on that?
You don't want to abuse it.
You don't want to abuse it? Exactly. You don't want to cause harm. You don't want to abuse. You don't want to belittle others. And I think you guys either have or may touch on that a little bit again with Siri and Cammie. When you talk to others, you don't talk down to them, you don't belittle them, and certainly you wouldn't want to abuse or harm them. But again, doesn't that come with recognizing the responsibility that you have when you have that sort of power and authority? And we've seen so many examples of individuals, especially in positions of authority, that abuse their power. But the one reason they get away with it is because they recognize they have that power. And so again, even once you appreciate what you have, use it in a way that's going to benefit others. But that's power. And we spend a lot of time on that because, again, we want people to appreciate that they all have this within them. And we want them to recognize the influence that they can have, not just on the job, which is very important, but even in life. And what is that? Jeanette, what was that P that you mentioned?
Passionate?
Passion. How many of you are passionate about something? Steve, what are you passionate about?
I coach sports.
Oh, yeah. Coach. So, coach.
Yes.
There you go. How about Donna? What are you passionate about?
I don't know. I do real estate.
You're like, okay, that's okay. That's good. I may come to you later. Giancarlo, what are you passionate about?
I'm passionate about help each other. Help.
Good. Oh, that's awesome. Alexa?
Health.
Health?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Jeanette?
Let's see. I'm passionate about my 4-year-old granddaughter.
Hey, all right. There's nothing wrong with that. That's all right. I can't believe you have a granddaughter. That's good. So you're passionate about your grandkids. That is awesome. How about you, Jody?
I'm passionate about the outdoors, so outside.
There you go. Okay. Doug?
As cheesy as it may sound to some people, quality. I've been in aviation for 15 years. I take it very personal. And
Well, we appreciate that.
you know, I invest a lot of myself into it and keeping the aircraft safe. And yeah.
Oh, that's huge. Very good. Shirley, what are you passionate about?
Two things. One is life, and second is leaving the world better when I leave than it was when I came in.
See, all of those are excellent. There's no right or wrong answer, right? Yeah, let's go. Sir, what are you passionate about? And I don't think I ever include you guys in this, but what are you passionate about?
I am passionate about so many things, but at the very
That's
top of my
obvious, isn't it?
list,
Yeah.
yeah, the very top of my list is my family for sure.
Yeah.
My family is just
Actually, I
number
have
one.
it. I remember you telling me.
Yeah,
this,
that is like number one. I
Loves
think
her family.
yeah, but other than that, I mean, I love arts and creative kinds of things. I love people. I love helping. I don't know.
No doubt. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I love lots.
Am I allowed to say
Cammie?
ditto?
Oh, sure, you can say
Yeah,
ditto.
music and travel and my faith.
Travel.
All three of those.
There you go.
Huge. There you go.
See, I think about all those answers, and I really appreciate all of you sharing that. And here's the reason why. When you're passionate about something, how hard is it, even if you don't like public speaking, how hard is it to talk about it? It's not. Right?
No.
Steve, if I want to talk about coaching, wouldn't you just go on and on, right?
Absolutely.
And the same thing, if you're passionate about life, you'll share those points with me, right? If you're passionate about health, like say, you have no problem sharing these things with me. And see, that passion rings through. So I don't think any of you I don't think any of you would have a problem being passionate when you're up before an audience if you had to talk about those things. But here it goes. What if you had to talk about something that you weren't passionate about, that you particularly weren't interested in? Like for me, it was golf. I'm just not into golf. But let me tell you something. If I knew everyone in my audience loved golf, I'd make sure that passion came through. I'd learn everything I could about golf beforehand. You know, I'd talk about Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus and anybody else. Why? Yeah. And why do you do that? Because what is your goal with your audience?
To connect.
To connect. See, and that's the thing. So when we talk about passion, I know sometimes some people may even feel it's overused. No. Because when you're passionate, it comes from your heart, whatever you're talking about. So that's very important. But here's the thing. You're not always going to be able to speak about something you enjoy, especially on the job, right? Your boss may tell you, you know what, Steve, I need you to do a presentation on this, that, and the other. You're like, what? You know, but you want to do it. Why? Because it's not about you. It's about your what? Yeah, it's about your job and those individuals that you can perhaps help. And isn't that the case, Jeanette? I mean, perhaps if you knew you had to give a speech tomorrow on something, it just wasn't something you enjoyed, but you recognized how important it was to the audience.
I'll learn about it.
You would learn about it. And see, that's what passion really involves. Not just being able to speak about what you enjoy, but being passionate about whatever it takes to move and inspire your audience. Does that make sense? And so that's one reason why, one thing that I've done in the past with classes I've had them give a 5-minute speech on something they were passionate about, just to really get them up there in front of an audience, because that's something kind of easy to talk about. But then I give them a 5-minute speech on something that they do not like or have no knowledge about, with the intent of educating and informing their audience. So it is possible to be passionate about something that you don't even enjoy, because that passion is extended to your audience. You have a sincere personal interest in benefiting them. And that passion will come through. They'll see that. And of course, in contrast, if you're not passionate, if you really could care less about that subject because you don't enjoy it, do you think your audience is going to sense that?
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. That's right. That's right. And yet, as obvious as that may be, isn't it true that we've all come across presenters who come across that way? I'm just here to share some information. They may not say that, but that's really what it's about. You know, okay, it's almost like the guy from Bueller, you know, the teacher, and except he can get away with that. That's just him. But most people can't. You know, no enthusiasm. You know, no love for the audience. We don't want to come across that way. So passion is so important, friends. And that's why that's another one of those P's that you must recognize. Now let's go on to the third P. Purpose. Purpose. Think about that. A person's purpose in giving a presentation or speaking before an audience should never be just to be heard. Now, how many of us have ever been in some kind of situation where you could tell the individual all they really cared about was hearing their own voice? Now I'm actually, something else that I've done in my life, I was a local 46 electrician at one time. And I remember the union meetings. And I don't know how many of you have been to union meetings, but there's always that one person who just has to get up there when, you know, the open mic, when they, okay, who has their concerns, come on up, and they just get up there and they just talk about nothing. And it's so obvious they just enjoy hearing themselves talk. So do they have purpose? No. And so for us too, we never want to speak just to be heard. We have to have a purpose in mind. Is our purpose to inform? Is it to educate? Is it to motivate, move to action? Is it to inspire? Perhaps it's to entertain. Or maybe it's a combination of all those things. But we have to recognize, what is our purpose? What am I trying to do? What do I want my audience to appreciate after this presentation? How do I want them to feel? You have to think about your purpose, and it may be something that as you go through that presentation, it becomes more and more evident, but generally speaking, can't you really try to figure that out even beforehand? Perhaps that's one good reason why you get to know the people that you're speaking to beforehand. Talk to them a little bit. Or educate yourself wherever you're going to be giving that presentation. Find out about the company. Find out about some of the individuals that are there. Because that will help you to make sure you align your purpose in line with why perhaps that company put these individuals together to listen to you. And so certainly that's a very important thing we have to keep in mind. What is my purpose? Is it going to benefit these individuals? Is it going to make them better persons? Are they going to at least learn something that they can get out of this, that they can benefit either at work, in their life? And so you're always, again, it goes back to what? That interest, that personal interest in others. So purpose. Now the fourth P is preparation. Now again, that may sound like an obvious one. Now we're not talking about just preparing for a specific speech. But we've all heard the term, you've heard someone say perhaps, I've been preparing for this all my life. Well, that's how we should view public speaking opportunities, because you never know when it may come up. You could be at a wedding and someone might say, Doug, can you offer a toast to the couple? What? Now, if you're not comfortable doing that, it's going to be kind of hard to do. But if you're comfortable, even if you may not know them that well, you may be like, okay, what am I going to say? But if you're used to that kind of stage, it won't be hard because you've prepared for it. You're used to giving speeches or what have you. So you can prepare ahead of time. And so that's a very important one. Now, obviously, though, when it comes to specific speeches, you want to put in the preparation, put in the time. But again, we're talking about just preparation in general. If you want to sound like you know what you're talking about, then know what you're talking about. And what does that involve? Knowing your subject. So that means studying ahead of time. That's all part of preparation. Now, another part of preparation is you really can work on the mechanics of public speaking. Now, more important than the mechanics, of course, is just being yourself, getting up there, and just being you. Again, being passionate, having it come from the heart. But mechanics are important. So when we talk about mechanics, when it comes to preparation, we're talking about working on your gestures. We're talking about working on your eye contact with your audience. We're talking about working on modulation. Now, modulation I love because it actually brings into account three other P's, as it were. Power, in a different sense, speaking about your speaking voice, pace, and pitch. You put all those things together, and what does it do? It helps to bring life to your speech. It adds variety. It's just like having a food that you enjoy. That food may be just as nutritious and maybe even tasteful without the salt, but doesn't it taste better when you add those spices to it? Most dishes, of course, taste a lot better when you add those spices, that variety. That's what modulation does. And so a lot of those things are involved in preparation. A lot of people perhaps are kind of monotone, but it's interesting that when they work on those mechanics, when they get in front of an audience, something else comes out. But it's because they put in the time to learn. And so modulation in particular is a very important one because, again, it just adds spice to your presentation. It makes it all the more palatable to your audience, and they're going to enjoy it. The information may be the same if it was monotone. It's the same information, but won't it be easier to swallow? Exactly, and that's the thing, and that's what we want our presentations to be. So preparation, very important. The fifth P, and Steve's going to appreciate this one being a coach. What makes perfect?
Practice.
Practice. Practice, practice, practice. Now, it goes without saying, we know the importance of repetition. When you do something long enough, you become good at it, right? So we understand that. But sometimes we may rest on our laurels, or perhaps we are experienced, and so we may not practice as much as we should. We feel we can just kind of get up there and just do our thing because we've done it before. And a great experienced speaker has failed doing that. And so we always want to practice. When it comes to public speaking, take the time to become better and better. And one example that I like to use with individuals is a comparison between Michael Jordan, who most people know, and Allen Iverson, who a lot of people may not know as well, but he was an awesome basketball player. Some people think pound for pound he might have been the best player. And the difference between the two, now Michael Jordan was legendary. We all know how great he was, but it's because he practiced. Even when he got to the top of his game, his practices were legendary. In fact, a lot of his teammates, they loved him, but they hated him because he just rolled them in practice to be the best. And he did that all throughout his career, even when he had won championships and become known as the greatest. Now, on the other hand, there's Allen Iverson. Now, I'm not going to say he never practiced, but there's a classic rant that some of you may remember where he missed a practice, and being the leader, of the team, you know, of course they expect you to be there. But he was, for like several minutes, he was like, practice. It's just practice. We're talking about practice. So obviously he felt like, well, it's not that important. Well, if any of you know what he's doing now and how his career plummeted, we don't know for sure if there's a connection, but just that attitude, does it help you to appreciate that why Michael Jordan was here and Iverson's career kind of went, you see? And the same thing can happen with public speaking. If you don't practice, if you don't take the time and put in the work, it doesn't matter how experienced you are. It's going to come back to hurt you. And so you should constantly try to do what you can to better yourself. Look for opportunities to speak if you can. When your boss or whoever asks you to do these things, we need a speech, we need a presentation. Can you do it? Do it. And there are many opportunities to practice too, like Toastmasters, Business Networking Institute, just opportunities that you get weekly to work on that craft, hone that skill, because you will be called on to use it. And so practice, again, it goes without saying, very important. Now the last P we're going to talk about, if I was to say, think about sewing. I don't know how many of you sew in here, but what does a person usually have when they sew? They follow a what?
Pattern.
A pattern. So what does that have to do with public speaking? Well, we mentioned some great speakers in here today. I know Alexia mentioned like Clinton, and Donna, you mentioned MLK, and there's many others. Well, we use these individuals as a pattern. Now, does that mean we're going to be the next Tony Robbins, the next Les Brown, the next Clinton? No. We want to be us. And we want to be real and stay true to ourselves, but we can still follow the pattern of these individuals. Now, of course, with Google and things like that, you can look up speeches, famous speeches and speeches of different individuals. Study them. Look at what makes them connect. This individual, what's his name again? Is it Doug or Don? That just
Oh, Don
video?
McLennan.
Oh, yeah.
Man, you see how he connected with people? Of
Yeah.
course, he was very humorous. He's a comedian as well. But just individuals like that, Cammy and Surrey, you know, they are so good at what they do when it comes to training. You can learn things from them, obviously. So you take this and that from different individuals, use that as a pattern, and use it to form yourself and becoming the next you. And so even though you may not have the desire to be a great motivational speaker, perhaps, you never know the impact that you can have on even one person in that audience that you're talking to could be huge. Not to mention the impact that you can have on friends and family in talking to them. And so again, by patterning yourself after other famous individuals and not so famous, you know, you'll be able to hone those skills, make yourself a much better presenter yourself, and have that impact that you wish to have. And so there you go. Those are 6 P's, 6 things that can help you to just get on that road to becoming a great public speaker. And so let's just go over them real quick again. What was the first one? The foundation? Power. And then you also want to cultivate a true passion. Not just for something you're passionate for, but passion about doing what? Connecting with your audience. Because it's about them. It's not about you. And then also recognizing and finding your true what? Purpose as far as public speaking. And then you always want to make sure you prepare. And then on top of that, practice. And then follow the pattern. See, and if you do those things, guaranteed you will become so much more effective in your public speaking and presentation skills. And you will have that tremendous impact. And you'll really show that you appreciate the power that you have, that you've been given. And now something that we need to keep in mind too. When it comes to public speaking, there is 1 P that we don't want to worry about. And it was touched on by Siri in her presentation as well. And what do you think that P is? We don't strive to be perfect. Don't try to be perfect. And I know for me, I'm kind of a perfectionist. That's my personality. So you have to keep in mind that I think Shirley mentioned it earlier too, that people sense you're human. If you just strive to be perfect, try to get everything just right, how's your audience going to feel? Are they ever going to feel they can measure up to that? No. You know, you make a few mistakes, a few word whiskers here and there. It's okay because you're being yourself. So don't be perfect. It's okay to be nervous when you give a presentation. It's okay to be nervous and have butterflies as long as they fly in formation. So just keep that in mind. There's nothing wrong with that. And nervousness is a good thing. It also keeps you humble. It keeps you humble and keeps you on the level of your audience. And they can relate to you more. And so I'll just end with another quote that I've always really appreciated. And it says this: every speaker has a mouth. It's an arrangement rather neat. Sometimes it's filled with wisdom, but sometimes it's filled with feet. And so what's the point? It's okay. You're going to make mistakes. You're not going to be perfect. But if you just show yourself to just be a normal person and you connect with that audience, you're going to have a much greater impact than you could ever have just trying to be just the perfect speaker. And so, again, friends, recognize the importance of public speaking. Recognize the power that you have within. Recognize the value that you can bring not just to your life, but to the lives of others.